On the road with the Western Ag Network.
Hi everybody from the Western Ag Network. I'm Russell Nemitz and it's time for another On the Road feature. And this week we're here in Great Falls for the Montana Farmers Union's annual convention. Now joining us is Montana Farmers Union President Walter Schweitzer out of that geyser country. And Walter, what a change in weather these past couple of days.
Yeah, you have a Montana Farmers Union convention, and you're going to have a winter storm event. And we should maybe have more of these conventions to bring moisture, because we always can use moisture.
Yeah, that's well put, friend. And you know, things might be cold and blustery outside, but they're really starting to heat up. Walk us through this year's agenda and, you know, just a few of the highlights.
Well, we're pretty excited that we have the largest registration pre-convention than we've had in a long time. So there's a lot of excitement out in farm country, and it is Farm Bill year. And so we're going to be talking a lot about Farm Bill and how Farmers Union wants to have a competition title. Our keynote speaker for Friday evening is Sarah Vogel, the farmer's lawyer. And, you know, she was the first woman elected as an ag director in North Dakota and actually anywhere in the United States. And I've seen her speak a few times. She gives a hell of a speech, and I'm looking forward to hers tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kind of turn our attention now to some of that important policy work that you, along with the board and other members, will be voting on and discussing here at this year's convention. As you mentioned, a big one, obviously, in farm country is getting a new farm bill sooner rather than later. And in addition to those important risk management tools like crop insurance, Walter, as you mentioned, a big priority for Farmers Union is a competition title.
That's right. You know, we don't have a fair marketplace. The corporate monopolies take advantage of the consumers and the producers. And it's high time that we have competition title in our farm bill so that we can address those anti-competitive practices of the corporate monopolies. You know, I can think of bills that would go right into that farm bill, like right to repair and mandatory cool. The special meat investigator who has the powers of the DOJ to investigate and punish, and the rules of the Packer Stockyard to enforce. There's a lot of good ideas that we could put in that competition title. And you know, we've invested under this current administration a lot of money into our infrastructure and processing capacity in the regions around the United States. But they're not going to be successful if we don't bring these corporate monopolies to a fair playing field. You've heard Joe Goggins say this a lot of times. We need a referee out there that's calling the penalties.
Yeah, that is very true, Walter. You know, as we talk about that farm bill and some of that discussion, not just here in Montana, but really across our region, I mean, what's cool about these state conventions is some of this state policy will actually make its way to the national policy, the National Farmers Union's annual convention next spring in Arizona.
That's right. And, you know, for me, it's one of the funnest part of our convention is to get all of our members together in a room and discuss our policy, debate it. I learned so much from those debates. And that's really what we've lost in our country. It used to be we have civil debates with our neighbors, and a good debate, you learn something from the other person. And we've lost that civility in our communities. And now the debates, you don't learn anything from them, you just become angry.
You know, you mentioned right to repair. How big of a win was it for Colorado's legislature to support the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union's effort, and talk about that, and then how, even though we didn't quite get right to repair across the finish line here in Montana, the victory in Colorado means a lot to other producers outside the Centennial State.
So the Farmers Union family, we've been trying to get this bill passed in many states. And we learn from each state, you know, the how to maybe move it forward. And it was a joint effort down in Colorado, and they did get it across the line. But you know, we had many of our members that testified on that. In fact, Ron Harmon from Big Bud Tractor, he made several calls to individual legislators down in Colorado to encourage them that we really need have right to repair. And we did get across the finish line. And we're making headway with the FTC, Federal Trade Commission. But the biggest, I think one of the biggest things that's happened in the last few months is when the EPA responded to National Farmers Union's letter that we feel that the Clean Air Act requires the equipment manufacturers to provide us the tools to maintain our emissions, and the EPA sent back a letter affirming our beliefs. So a big argument that these equipment manufacturers have been using is that, oh, if you give tools to the farmers, you know, they're going to tamper with their emissions. Well, I don't know any farmer who lives in this environment that wants to pollute this environment. So that was wrong, and the EPA agreed.
You know, you and I visited on radio last night that there wasn't a whole lot of good that came out of the COVID pandemic, but one thing that did come out of it was a message that was shouted loud and clear, not just in farm and ranch country, but across America and more of our urban areas, about the need to increase meat processing. And the Biden administration and the USDA have heard that message, and now that's providing lots of opportunities in rural states like Montana. Talk about what's going on within the Montana Farmers Union family, and you're doing exactly that in a couple different locations in Big Sky country.
Well, when the consumers were facing empty grocery store shelves, meat counters, and produce, and meanwhile, livestock producers were euthanizing livestock, dairy producers were dumping milk down a drain, and vegetable growers were plowing in their produce. That's a broken food supply chain. And Farmers Union saw this, and we started working on it right away. And we advocated with the current administration and Congress to do something about it, but we're also leading by example. We started a meat processing co-op, Montana Premium Processing Co-op up in Havre, and we're working with MSU Northern to train butchers. And it's a great, oh man, you should go see it if you haven't. It's one of the nicest butcher shops around. In fact, the USDA inspector says he thinks it's the nicest in the region. And it's really clicking. And because of this, our Farmers Union members over in the Flathead want to do the same. And so they created a co-op, the Glacier Processing Co-op, and they're going to start processing meat the 1st of January. So things are going on, but like I said before, if we don't have a fair marketplace so that we can compete against these big corporate monopolies fairly, we're going to fail.
Hey, I just want to wrap things up. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of positive momentum within the Montana Farmers Union, your membership, and just the extended family across Big Sky country. We've been talking a lot about policy, but boy, that's just one leg of that Farmers Union stool, isn't it?
That's right. And, you know, we started an ambassador program. So we have ambassadors in all the regions around Montana, and they're holding a lot of meetings. It's, I thought, you know, we get a bunch of people helping us around the state of Montana. It'll kind of reduce my workload a little bit. Oh my gosh, I've got more meetings to go to than I can get to. And it's a little discouraging for me that I can't get to every Farmers Union meeting in Montana, but it's pretty exciting because we've got meetings going on every week.
It's pretty empowering. Thanks for giving me a couple minutes here at your convention, Walter. Appreciate it.
Yep.
And for more details about everything that the Montana Farmers Union is working on, whether it's policy or kids activities or cooperative ideas, you can always jump online and visit them at montanafarmersunion.com.
As we come back with more conversations on the road this week from the Montana Farmers Union Convention, we're catching up with Maureen Wicks. She is the Executive Director of the Montana Farm Service Agency office, and though she's headquartered down in the Bozeman office, she's really not too far from the home base up just north of here past Tiber Reservoir. But Maureen, I guess, how is it down seeing so many producers this week at the Farmers Union Convention?
It's great to visit and be able to get here. You feel, once you get out of the mountains and headed across the plains, you feel like you're home. So, and you walk in and you see all the familiar faces. It's very good, and they have a very good turnout. So it's good to see people, and it's been a very busy summer. And it's good to catch up with everyone and find out how the crops were and how the calves are going and what's going on. So great to be here. and looking forward to visiting with everyone while we're here.
Well, so much of the time on our programs on the Western Ag Network, we talk about Farm Service Agency, important deadlines, and really for our viewers and listeners out there that are tuning into this, how important is Farm Service Agency being a backbone and a critical component for the success of farmers and ranchers across the state of Montana and nationwide?
Yes, I agree with you. We are such a vital part of farming, agriculture, ranching here in the state of Montana and across the United States. I particularly like the local level that goes on. The county committees I'm a fan of county committees. I served on the Liberty County Committee for 15 years, and that's where you learn the basic thing. The programs that are available and what's happening there, and you can keep updating what's going on and know what's going on in your county committee. I'd like to encourage anybody that has an interest in a producer that has an interest in serving on those, please go ahead, sign up, sit on your committee. You won't regret it. It's very good. The other thing about the county committee is going back to the 1933 Farm Bill, county committees have an input in. We're the only one of any federal agency that actually has producers that serve on the committee and actually vote to elect the people that represent them on the committee. Our county COCs, they are the ones that hire the CED, the county executive directors. They're the ones that look into the programs. They work towards, oh, this is really working well with us. Hey, they'll let us know at the state level, this is not working well at all. Here are suggestions that you can make to these various, whether they're ranching programs, whether they're farming programs. Here are things we can do that will make us better. And that's so important to us at the state level, so important to FSA and to agriculture. I think we do a great job, but we can always do better. So we welcome that and going on, yes.
Well, and so much of the time, we at times on air have to be sharing if a disaster has happened, if drought is occurring. Sometimes we have to say, reach out to your local FSA office to see if you qualify for some of these programs for disaster aid. And sometimes just going to that USDA Service Center is more important because sometimes it's NRCS or one of the other divisions underneath the USDA umbrella. But, we've actually had a pretty good year so far here in Montana. And I don't really want to focus on those disaster and drought, even though we do have some of those declarations that have occurred.
Yes.
But what are some of those programs that maybe young producers can look at in terms of trying to get a foothold in agriculture, get a start, maybe expand on their own, maybe they're part-time producers? What are some of those programs that you would encourage folks to look at?
Okay. Do go into your local county office. Go in and visit. We have a very good staff there in our offices. And what they can do is every one of our programs is a program for a beginning farmer or rancher. Every one of our programs can be tailored for a beginning farmer or rancher. And they will be able to explain to you, here are some of the benefits that you can have as a beginning farmer or rancher. Because what's important to us, and I know Secretary Vilsack says this quite a bit, we want to keep farmers farming, we want to keep ranchers ranching, and the way you do this is generational. And that's why it's so important to give our young people an opportunity to get involved, stay involved, and to be successful. This is important. The other thing when we look at our county offices, and one thing that I've been especially working on is I was one of 10 SED state executive directors that was appointed to a committee to meet in DC, to go out to the USDA, and to talk about retention of our employees at our county levels. As things change, and I think all of us knew that during the pandemic, that it changed the entire workforce, and we're working with that because if you have we have to have our best people at the local level. That's where our producers are, that's where they come in, that is where they are going to get the knowledge that is going to work up. And I like that about our county committees, I like that about our county offices, We're in agriculture. It's from the ground up. That's where we get our input, and it's our local communities. We, we deal with, yes, we have a county office, yes, we have producers, but we also have schools, hospitals, economic development, different things going on, and we want to keep rural America going, so very much so.
Well, and as of this conversation taking place at the Montana Farmers Union Convention, obviously the Farm Bill has expired at the end of September, and a new Farm Bill, it could be a year, 18 months out is what some people are saying. At this point, though, all Montana Farm Service Agency offices are open and programs are continuing to go forward. Obviously a lot up in the air unless they can continue that expired Farm Bill, but as of this conversation, those programs are still fully operational.
Yes, we have the CR going on until I think that date was November 17th, and we're hoping that we'll get, we would really love to see, a budget passed, and we'd love to see a new Farm Bill passed. That gives us stability, then we're able to move forward. But at the same time, right now, our offices are open. We have to wait for the funding to come in for some of the programs, but we were very happy that when they did pass the first one and give us that, because as we all know, CRP checks come out in October, and we understand that. We understand that a lot of us, because I've been a producer, I've had CRP, I know when you go in and you talk to your banker and you say, hey, I'll pay that at this date, I'm getting that CRP check, we'll make good on that. So it makes a huge difference, and those were able to come out, and we're very happy. I also want to give a hats off to our people that work in our county offices, because they take a lot of pride in working through this, getting things done. They have a lot of respect for the producers, and they want to be the best they can be for these people, and they know the importance that FSA and the farm programs pay in agriculture and to agriculture producers. So it's so far so good. So we're looking forward. I'm an optimist. I think most farmers and ranchers, you have to be, because that's just the way it's been.
Well, maybe taking your executive director hat off, what's it like being a mom sitting in the audience here at the Farmers Union Convention and seeing your son John up on stage and helping set a direction for an agricultural group and advocate for the ag industry?
I'm very proud of John, and I'm very proud of everything he's done for agriculture. When we lost Russ so suddenly, and that was back in '06, and John and I, we had to pull together and see what we were going to do. I wanted him to stay in college. He wanted to come home and farm, and he came home to farm. We have great friends and neighbors that helped us through this. Also being sitting on the COC in Liberty County, at least I had an understanding of what farm programs were. I understood what the what a CRP contract was. I knew we had deadlines, and I'm very thankful that I had all of that to do. I'm also very thankful for the support that was within our community. So to see John pick up on this and move forward, and it was time. In 2013, 2014, I was ready to retire from teaching, and John was he was ready to lease the farm from me, and that worked out very, very well. So he's very progressive. I'm old school. I'm dry land grain, and both Russ and I've often said, geez, John, your dad, he's probably just rolling over going, what are you guys doing? But it's been good, and I think the forward-looking things in agriculture, as we look back, I look back, 45 years since married Russ and we were farming, the changes that have come about. And, agriculture has always changed and improved. So it's great to see it, and it's great to see here in Montana. When you go back to DC and you meet the other SEDs from, the other 49 states and Puerto Rico, it's interesting, and we're very innovative here. People are often like, oh, Montana, but then you start talking, and we are one of the forefront of people that are making decisions, and across the United States, when you see the input that people in the Midwest take from Montana, and they'll say, oh, well, this is what Montana's doing. And we go, yeah, this is it. And so it's good. and we have to be that way because it's just where we're at, and it's if you're from up on the High Line, it's dry, the wind blows, and you have to make everything count.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's what we're trying to do.
And Highway 2 is not that wide, so Well,
Good,
Maureen,
but,
thank
yeah.
you so much for joining us here
thank
today.
you.
We
Very
appreciate
much
you
appreciate
taking
Lane. Yeah, great.
Appreciate you taking time, and of course, we're here at the Montana Farmers Union Annual Convention. Maureen Wicks, Executive Director of the Montana Farm Service Agency. We'll have more conversations throughout our time here in Great Falls. As we come back today with our conversations on the road from the Montana Farmers Union's annual convention, attendees this year have been hearing from a whole host of speakers discussing every aspect of agriculture, including insurance and securities. And we're actually joined today by one of those speakers, Troy Downing, the state auditor for the state of Montana, joining us here today. And Troy, as producers come and gather in Great Falls, what was it like talking with producers here this week about your role as state auditor? Because I believe that's one of those roles that a lot of people really don't truly understand.
Yeah, it is. It's an office most people don't understand, but really simply, we are a criminal justice agency. We put bad guys in jail, but we regulate the insurance and securities industries for the state. And another notable, my only constitutional duty is I sit on the Board of Land Commissioners, so the land board managing our state trust lands.
So I guess, what are some of those big challenges? Obviously, insurance is very important for
Right.
the security of our state's farmers and ranchers. I guess, what are some of the key things that you've been working on here as of late?
Well, a couple of things. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in farm mutuals around the state, and also talk about some of the criminal side, just to, so that people understand what's happening there. On the farm mutuals, a lot of people may not understand, but there's this layer to insurance companies called reinsurance that is really taking most of the risk. And most domestic insurance companies can't actually operate without reinsurance because that's the big money that spreads out that risk. And what we've seen the last couple of years is we've seen this contraction in reinsurance companies. They've been losing money, and they're raising their rates, and they're deciding to pull out of certain markets. And so we're seeing a lot of the farm mutuals in the state are now struggling to find reinsurance. And we saw it was probably close to a year ago, the Farm Mutual in Plentywood, they were unable to secure reinsurance. So what they had to do was they had to, cancel their policies, because without that, they just don't have the reserves that they're statutorily required to have so that they can pay losses if they need to. And so now we're coming up on the end of another year when the other farm mutuals are trying to find either renewals in their reinsurance or find replacement reinsurance. And my office, we've been working with them closely about, making sure they understand the seriousness of that, because these farm mutuals, obviously they're the lifeblood for a lot of these rural and farming and ranching communities. And if they go under, it's going to hurt. And so we've been talking to them about starting early on trying to find replacement reinsurance, or finding opportunities to come together with affiliations or aggregations of trying to do something to increase their financial strength so that they can actually continue doing that business. And one of the things I just want to say is that the clock is ticking on this. A lot of these have, they're going to have to respond to our office that they have adequate reserves and adequate reinsurance by November 15th, or they're going to have to start sending out non-renewals. So this is coming up quick. And so that's a big issue for us, because I'm sure you and your listeners understand, this is important in these communities.
So how can a farmer or rancher that is listening or viewing this, how can they check to make sure that their agency, and again, these agencies are so much of the a backbone of these communities
Right.
and operations, how can they work with those agencies to make sure that everything is on the straight and narrow, or can they reach out to you, or should they reach out to the agency? Obviously, this could be a little bit of a delicate subject.
It can be a very delicate subject, and one of the things that we're trying to make sure is that the lines of communication are open, and so we're communicating with with the directors, with these boards about the importance of this issue. But for the people who are concerned about these renewals coming up, yeah, they should reach out to their agent and understand the strength of the company that they're riding with right now, and be prepared to start looking in other markets for that. And I got to tell you, for a lot of folks, that may be a rude awakening, because those rates are almost certainly going to be higher.
Well, again, you're here at the Montana Farmers Union annual convention. What were some of the questions you maybe had from attendees here this year on your role
Well,
and
actually,
what it plays?
yeah, well, thanks for asking that, because one of the interesting ones, and this was from Walt Schweitzer, he was talking about capital formation, which is, when I put on my securities hat, is a big part of what we do. And capital formation is a fancy way of saying raising money from investors. And so he was asking about, the crowdfunding laws in Montana, and just to make it really simple, there's this spectrum from a public offering of a public company, which is obviously a big, complicated, expensive thing, all the way down to intrastate offerings of raising money within the state to crowdfunding offerings. And so, rather than getting into the details of that, I'm just going to say we have resources at our office on helping you understand how to navigate those. If you're taking money in from investors, there's going to be some paperwork required, and so we can walk you through that and tell you what types of things are available. And I got to say, we had our first annual Capital Formation Summit about 3 or 4 months ago, and that's going to be an annual recurring event. And one of the things that really made me smile about that is a lot of people, when they think about entrepreneurs raising money from investors, they immediately think tech. And obviously tech is growing and important in Montana. But when we did ours, we wanted to make clear that it wasn't just tech. And so the companies that we had talking about lessons learned, about the hurdles of raising money from investors, of how they got everything together to build their companies. We had the old salt co-op there, talking about obviously cattle industry, in-state processing, everything that they're doing. We had Montucky Cold Snacks, beer producer in the state. We had all these different types of agriculture value add companies, which that's our bread and butter here. So it made me smile to be able to showcase those types of businesses on that. And so that's one of the questions that came up here. And just one other thing that I'd love to spend a minute on, if you don't mind, is I'd mentioned that we are a criminal justice agency. And we uphold the law. We are the state of Montana versus. And when people cross the lines, especially if it's hurting industry or hurting the public, we take that role very seriously. And we had a insurance producer, insurance agent in Forsyth last year who pled guilty recently to aggravated identity theft and fraud. And Kylene Hagedorn, I can say that she's already pled guilty, so this is not alleged. Hasn't been sentenced yet. But what she was doing is she was taking premiums from farms, ranches, from Chief Dullknife College, putting them in her pocket. And most of the farming and ranching community, you get paid once a year, you pay your bills once a year. They pay the premium all up front, so big, large dollar amount premiums. She would take that. She's spending a lot of time in the casino. She would set up payment plans with the insurance company without telling that farmer or rancher or college that she was doing that. And she would just think that she could keep that money and do something with it and eventually, pay it when it was due. But she wasn't making more money. So when she was unable to make those payments, the ranchers are getting these notices from the insurance company saying we're canceling due to non-payment. They would call her up and say, what's going on? We paid this all up front in full. And so they would call her and she'd say, oh, don't worry, there's a mistake, I'll fix it. And then she would basically forge their signatures, send a notice to the insurance company saying, please change the address to my office, so that she was now getting all those notices. And the reason I want to bring this up is, just beware, because we've had a couple of instances like that, and she's facing 20 years in prison. She hasn't, been sentenced yet. That's coming up in Billings. But just beware, because that was a very well-known agent in a small community where everybody knows everybody, and a lot of folks were suspecting something was going on, and it had to grow to a head until somebody actually said something. And clearly she put a lot of people in harm's way by not keeping their premiums up. But that's all been handled. I mean, the good part of that story is we went to the insurance companies and said, this was one of your agents. You need to make this right. And so they honored the policies even when they didn't receive the premiums on that. So we did mitigate some of that risk. But for the people out there listening, just check. You know, we've had instances of people doing, like I just said with Kylie Hagedorn. We've also had instances where folks have written fake policies. So no matter who it is, just check with the actual insurance company, not the agent. Make sure that they have a record of you being insured and that you've paid the premium that you know that you've paid.
Well, again, a lot of good information, especially for farmers and ranchers that have been hard at work here as of late. We've seen a little bit of profits here this year in the cattle
Right.
markets, of course, but trying to make sure that everything is, all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed is so important. So thank you, Troy Downey, for joining us here today.
I'm happy to be here, and if you have questions, complaints, just reach out to our office.
All right. Well, again, friends, thank you for joining us here on the road from the Montana Farmers Union Convention.
Well, as we continue our conversation from here at the Montana Farmers Union's 108th Annual Convention here in Great Falls, Montana, it's my pleasure to introduce to everyone this year's keynote speaker, the lovely Sarah Vogel. And Sarah, you're the author of The Farmer's Lawyer, among a lot of other important things that you've done over your life and your career. And we're going to talk about a lot of those during this interview. But Sarah, I want to learn more about your book and I guess the premise behind that book, because that's a big part of your presentation here at this year's convention.
Yes, I wrote the book because I did a very big case in the 1980s, during the 1980s farm depression. And one of the reasons I knew that there were things that I could do in the 80s as a lawyer were because I grew up with all these stories from the 30s, from the 1930s farm depression, where North Dakota banded together and the Farmers Union, and they enacted a whole lot of laws. The governor declared a moratorium on farm foreclosures. So I grew up in the nonpartisan league branch of the Democratic Party in North Dakota. And the idea was that farmers are the basis of North Dakota, and everybody should do everything they could to help farmers. So in the 80s, farm depression came along, and many thousands of farmers, not just in North Dakota, but nationwide, were being threatened with foreclosure. I thought I should try to do something. So I brought the case that is what the book is about. And I wrote it so that it doesn't happen again. We can't afford to have another 80s farm depression. We can't afford loss of family farms. We can't afford another 30s. But they tend to come every 50 years or so, roughly. So we've got to watch out. We don't want that. And a lot, as you'll hear in many conventions across the country, like this one, the economics of family farming is very tenuous. And the rest of us who eat food, who depend on farmers, need to come and help family farmers.
How daunting of a task during that time. I mean, as a relatively new attorney, I mean, obviously from a farm state like North Dakota, but still, how intimidating was it to tackle this huge issue and really kind of throw yourself out there and say, I'm going to take on the federal government and not allow these foreclosures of these family farms?
It took a lot of naivete. And, you know, after a while, you know, I was on a train going 100 miles an hour. You can't jump off. You have to keep going no matter what. So it was, but it was great. And I think maybe the most significant thing I've ever done in my life is to do that case.
And one of the underlying messages, Sarah, that you're delivering, whether it's here in Great Falls at this year's Montana Farmers Union Convention or all the other speaking engagements you do throughout the year, is the need and empowering other farmers and ranchers to really start being bigger and better advocates for themselves, right?
Yeah, and you know, the stories of the past, I think, can inform the present. And so I wrote this. I'm a lawyer, and I'm used to writing legal style. And legal style is not entertaining, it's not fun. So I had to, that was one of the biggest challenges, is to write it as a I tried to write it as though it were a John Grisham novel. In fact, I have a blurb from John Grisham.
Really?
Yes, I do. And I've got this, for the paperback, I have a foreword by Willie Nelson.
I saw that.
Yeah, and so they're helping me get the story out. I wanted to write it as an interesting book, and the complaint I get about the book a lot is I had to stay up all night.
They didn't want to they didn't want to put it down,
they didn't
right?
want to put it down, so like, yes, that's what I was going for. Lots of drama, and there was a lot of drama. There was a lot of drama.
That's incredible. I just have to ask. I mean, John Grisham is one thing, obviously, in the book world, and
Yeah.
obviously a worldwide known author. But how fun was it to reach out to Willie Nelson? Of course, I mean his backstory, Farm Aid, and has been there for family farmers and ranchers, you know, throughout most of his musical career. I mean, what was it like to visit with him and ask him to be part of your paperback version?
It was amazing, and when I got the foreword back from Willie through the Farm Aid people, I just cried, because in not that many words he summarized the why we should care about family farmers and what we can do for family farmers. So it really is a marvelous foreword, and it's on my website, sarahnvogel.com, and it's read by John C. Reilly, the Academy Award-winning actor. And I tell you, when you hear this in John C. Reilly's voice, it's just amazing. And then we also have on the website John C. Reilly and other musicians singing the song Heartland, which Willie Nelson and Bob Dylan wrote in 1985, and it's about farm foreclosures. And I used to listen to those Willie Nelson, and he had a CD of duets, and I used to listen to it, and it would just provide hope. You know how important it is. You know, these musicians and artists can say in a song that only lasts 2 minutes what it took me 350 pages to write.
Yeah, what an incredible
Yeah.
story. And you know, the book is one thing, but you truly are a trailblazer in so many areas, Sarah. I mean, I want to switch gears just a minute, because in addition to being a famous author now, like before that though, you were blazing the trails in the political world, so to speak. You became North Dakota's first female agriculture commissioner, and to take it one step further, not just North Dakota's, but really the United States' first
Yeah.
female ag commissioner.
Yeah.
Talk about, you know, that leap into that part of politics and having that opportunity to not just serve agriculture in North Dakota, but really being, you know, an inspiration to other ladies out there.
Well, yeah. After I did the case, I became an assistant attorney general, and my focus was on using the powers of North Dakota state government and the laws to help family farmers. And I did that for 2 years, and while I was doing that, I used to look up at what the agriculture commissioner was doing. And he was a good guy, he was doing some good things. He started credit counseling and so forth. But I thought I could do better. And then I thought, how do I become ag commissioner? Well, the only way is you gotta run.
Yeah.
So I decided to run, and you learn as you go. So I would encourage lots of people to just take a leap, you know, learn about it, and if you're passionate about it, you can make a big difference. Sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to get into elected office. But I didn't realize that I would be the nation's first elected woman commissioner of agriculture, or for that matter, appointed.
Yep.
In the history of the United States until after I won, and then somebody wrote about it, the nation's first. I go, really? So it was kind of naivete, but I wanted the job, and the only way I could get that job was to run for it. Yeah. It's elected in North Dakota, which I think is very good, very good system, because a gubernatorial appointee is going to be answerable to the governor, whereas an elected ag commissioner is elected to, to represent the people. But everybody gets to vote for an ag commissioner.
Yeah, well said. And just kind of another backstory to what you just mentioned. Of all things, like I just learned too, like obviously Farmers Union has played a big role in your
Huge.
life and your career over the
Yeah.
years. And of course, a familiar name, a very familiar name, not just in North Dakota, but across America, Roger Johnson,
Yeah.
who succeeded you
Yeah.
as the ag commissioner in North
Yeah,
Dakota,
yeah.
and then went on, of course, to lead the National Farmers Union as its national president
Yeah,
for
yeah.
lots of years. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about that relationship between you
Yeah.
and Roger and the Farmers Union family, not just here in Montana, but across America.
Well, Roger and I happen to be from the same county in North Dakota. My home county is McLean County. That's Roger's home county. And so, and it was both so we both Farmers Union. My dad was the lawyer for the Farmers Union when I was growing up. So I used to go to Farmers Union picnics and stuff like that. And then he beat back corporate farming law one time and da-da-da. So, so I was Assistant Attorney General, and the farm credit counselors who were working on all these very complex questions would come up and ask me stuff. And I remember Roger was one of them, and he would come up and he would ask these insightful questions, and I would give him the answer. He'd say, okay. And he would go get it done. And so, so when, before I got elected, I asked him, I said, if I get elected, will you run our credit counseling program? And he did. And he had to hire like 80 people, train 80 people. They worked nonstop. At the very end of my book, that's kind of a culmination, because I became ag commissioner, and down the hall was Roger Johnson, working with all these farmers. And then when I left being ag commissioner after 2 years, Roger ran, and he won, and he was there until he became the head of the National Farmers Union. So I can't properly call Roger my protege, because he's like way up there and understood farm policy and farm background. But we both come from that same tradition of helping farmers.
And helping farmers, you and Roger and so many
Yeah.
other people involved with the Farmers Union have done for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, and thank you to the Montana Farmers Union for all the good work that they do, and the Nationals too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, today it's been our pleasure to visit with Sarah Vogel from North Dakota, one of this year's attendees and this year's keynote speaker here in Great Falls at the 108th Annual Montana Farmers Union Convention. Of course, she's the author of The Farmer's Lawyer. And for more information about this wonderful book, insightful book that will empower you really to become a better advocate for yourselves and your agricultural industry, you can visit her website online at sarahmvogel.com. And of course, for more of our coverage from here at the Montana Farmers Union Convention, you can visit us at westernagnetwork.com, and be sure to check us out on our social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, and be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. For Lane Nordland, I'm Russell Nimitz, Western Ag Network.
On the road with the Western Ag Network.